online can hear me. If somebody can start the recording, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll
Thanks,
get
Donna. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
I started it,
Thanks,
Rasha.
Paula.
So, yep,
Thanks.
it's recording.
Thanks, guys. So as you can see, I have Paula, David, Michael, and Donna from, I guess, the English Learner Title III team. We're all going to be giving some updates and Title III allocations, assessments. Donna will be talking a little bit about the screener and the program side of English learners and a few updates. I will start off with some basic Title III allocations that we typically start working on during the spring. Because of COVID and because of Corona, everything has been pushed back a little bit, I have to say. So we just requested the data from our data manager last week to know about the updated English learner numbers that we have in the state of Ohio for this past year. I will share that information as soon as I have it available. We are again taking the October count. We've had conversations back and forth during Corona about the provisional ELs, and then we've sent out a few communications. I know David, Paula, and Donna, they have sent out communication for the districts. We have communicated it through the websites, through so many updates, asking the school districts to still report their provisional ELs. So it will be interesting to see how the numbers look when we get the data from our data manager. Can everybody see my screen? I
Yes.
see a few, I think, new people in here in the meeting. Do we want to go do introductions a little bit quickly? I'll start. I'm Rasha. I'm the Title III coordinators in the Office of Federal Programs. I've been working with the Title III Consortium now for going on third year. We typically have our spring meeting in person, but this year in the last meeting, we've had just virtual meetings, and I will be able to record the meeting and post it in our CCIP document library in case if you have any colleagues or somebody who are not able to attend. With me, I have Donna Villarreal, David Brower, Paula Mahaley, and Michael Crace. Me and Michael Crace, we work in the Office of Federal Programs, so we primarily work with monitoring, Title III allocations, data reporting, and things of that sort. And then David and Paula, they work together in the Office of Assessment, basically on the assessment piece. And then Donna Villarreal, hopefully a lot of you are familiar with those names by now. She works in the Lao Resource Center, and she works mostly with the program side of the English learners. Do we want to go? Nancy, you're just the first one coming up for me, your name. Nancy Roscoe.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Nancy Stone with Perrysburg Schools. I am a consortium LEA for about 5 different districts. So, oops. And there you go. Hi, morning.
Hi, morning. If anybody want to go next, especially the new people, I know I see a few names here that I'm not familiar with.
Good morning, I'm Heather Ross, and I am the new Title III coordinator for Licking County.
Welcome aboard, Heather.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Mary Snellgrove. I'm the Title III coordinator for Butler County Educational Service Center, and we have about 6 districts in our consortium.
Good morning, Dana Weber, Stark County Educational Service Center. We have about 26 districts in our consortium.
Good morning, Sandy Stebley, Tri-County ESC. We are with Ashland, Holmes, and Wayne counties.
Good morning, I'm Bill Lawson with the Montgomery County ESC. We have about a dozen districts currently in our consortium.
This is Connie Reyes-Rao from Hamilton County ESC, and we have about 20 districts in our consortium that flow through. And I'd like to introduce my colleague, Andy Phillips. Andy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Phillips. I'm an EL consultant with Hamilton County ESC. I'm working with Connie and then our districts as well.
Good morning, Donna Rapich, well, not Mahoning County, I'm sorry, we just had a name change, ESC of Eastern Ohio, and we work with Mahoning, Columbiana, and some Portage County districts, and I think there's about 17 of them. So good morning, everyone. And,
Hi, my name's Olivia Wiseman, and I'm from the ESC in Lorain County with the consortium coordinator here. We have about 10, give or take, districts.
Jill Kramer, ESC of Central Ohio. We have about 30 districts in our consortium.
Luana Kappas, North Central Ohio ESC. We have about eight districts.
Homer Hendricks, Northwest Ohio ESC. We've got about 10 districts in our consortium.
Okay. I think that's almost, I'll go back to sharing my screen. Thank you everybody for being here. So I'll start off with Title III Consortium. We'll talk about the basics that we usually discuss about allocations, timelines, agreements, MOUs, load files and things of that sort. And then we'll go in and talk briefly about Title III, the new monitoring system that we have in place. And we've been working with few school districts on their monitoring for Title III. And then we will specifically talk about Title III Consortium monitoring. And then last that I'll talk about is a Title III family engagement. We've had a really good PowerPoint that was presented from few English Learner Advisory Council members that were able to jointly present with us during the last OASFAP. And I know for those that have been in the consortium for this current year, that's fiscal year that's ending, they've had an additional money for family engagement specifically, and additional allocations that they've received. So I thought sharing those ideas would be hopefully helpful. Although I know those money are coming to an end and they should be drawn down very soon by the end of this fiscal year because they don't have any carryover. But I'll touch briefly on the few things that were shared during that presentation. And then I'll have my colleagues, David and Paula and Donna, share what other updates that they have ongoing in their offices as well. So for the allocations, like I said, we've had few changes in our office, and the typical colleagues that I worked with on the allocations team have moved or either got promoted. So we just met a couple of weeks ago with our new allocations team and figured out who will be working with me on the allocations. We did receive the estimated Title III allocation for the upcoming fiscal year, which, as you can see, is just a little bit more than what we've had in FY21. But depending on the numbers, again, that we've requested from our data managers for the EL students numbers reported in last October, we will see last year our per pupil allocation for the state was 159.34 on average for each EL English learner student in Ohio. So once we have the total English learners in Ohio in both the public and the non-public, I'll be able to figure out a per pupil allocation and we'll definitely let you know. But you can probably estimate plus or minus it's going to be around the same allocations amount that we've had. Unless you know the consortium members that you've been working with have had a drastic change in their English learner numbers because of COVID, or they were not able to do the screener and for some reason they were not able to report their English learner students. But again, it will be interesting to see those numbers, and I'll make sure that I share at least those numbers with you as we go throughout the process so we have the final estimated allocations for the school districts determined, and I'll let you know definitely as soon as we know. For the agreements and the MOUs, there's really no changes. All of you by now have had an agreement or a memorandum of understanding that they've had on file with their consortium members. For those that are new to the process. This was a requirement that was put in place a few years ago. And we ask you that you upload it in the CCIP budget details page like you've done last year when it's time for you to submit your CCIP budget. So there is no need to email it to me or any of that sort, but once you have the agreement signed by the superintendent, the treasurers, just go ahead and load it in the CCIP budget details page when you submit your budget by July 1 for the earliest substantially approved date. Few things that I just wanted to get feedback on in regard to the consortium process and the members and the way that you report them to me. So I know last year I had the help of our admin assistant, and she created a survey monkey for everybody to kind of upload or indicate who are the members that they will be participating in their Title III consortium, and just sending me that file. And as I got those files, I start uploading them and uploading the allocations in the CCIP. And then you submit your budget and you upload your MOU or the contract in the CCIP budget details page. So feel free to chat in the chat box to let me know, raise your hand or just speak or email me in private if you want to. The Survey Monkey, I know a few of you have emailed me last year that they've had issues uploading the IRNs and things like that. So for this year, I've been running the idea of maybe creating a document, an Excel document that would be easier to maneuver. It will just depend on how comfortable you are with uploading IRNs and uploading the names. It's basic confirmation, again, like last year, nothing extensive, just the name of the superintendent, the treasurer, IRN, the district name or the district member name and their county, just to make sure that there are no mix-ups, because there are a few of them that has the same name, but the IRN, sometimes a lot of you just kind of drop the zero and just causes issues when we do the load file. So if you can just let me know in the chat, talk about it if you want to talk about it now, or just email it to me in private afterwards. If you were okay with the Survey Monkey that we've created last year, or you would rather just have a Google Doc Excel file that would be easier for you to upload your IRNs. It's up to you. Just let me know, and I'm flexible and I'll work with you just to make it easier. I know it's a lot of work for those who have a lot of members. For you that have very few, it's not a big deal, but those that has a lot of members, it's just, I know it's a lot of work to keep uploading all of those IRNs, counties and names and so on. Thanks, Dana. So any questions so far on the process or on uploading MOUs, allocations, any of that sort? Okay. So I just thought I know a few of you have been emailing me questions for their members that have been going through the Title III monitoring. Me and Michael Grace and Donna has been involved with few monitoring virtual on-sites that we've had, mostly for the big urbans. Me and Michael have been asked for a few others that are not typically big urbans to help with their monitoring. We've not really had any major changes in the questions. The major thing that changed in our office in general is just the switch to the new monitoring system. So before, the way you access it, hopefully a lot of you have accessed it and seen it by now. Just takes some time to get used to, but I think it's more user-friendly once you're familiar with it. The only problem when they moved from the compliance system to the new monitoring system, the last question right here about the EL program evaluation got dropped out. So I've had a few questions from some of your districts and also emailed the consultants in our office to let them know when they do the on-site, virtual on-site or the desk survey, to make sure that they still ask for the program evaluation for the English learner program evaluation, and just lump it in that question about monitoring the exited ELs for at least 2 years. The questions, other than that, the questions have been the same questions that we've been asking for the last few years, requiring an English learner program handbook, written plan. We don't have any specific requirements regarding the EL program handbook, but in general, it will just be an overview if the English learner, how they identify their students, making sure that you are giving out the screener and home language survey and so on, the typical process that we have for the English learners. Some districts have just a 1-pager or a 2-page brochure or booklet. Others have a whole 50-page booklet. Really depends on how extensive you want to be in your program handbook. But again, that's a requirement that has to be there for all the districts. Second question that we have in process is about the identification process. Make sure that you have the language usage survey when you first have a new student. If you're suspecting that that student might be an English learner, that's when you do the screener, and then you start the identification process and you ask for the parents' permission if they would allow them to participate in the English learner program. The ALPA, making sure that your assessments are in place. Even with COVID, I think a lot of school districts were able to implement the assessment and have a lot of students come back in school to do the assessment, the ALPA assessments. Making sure that all the English learners have access to all the district's activities that's happening in the school districts, and making sure that the language barrier or the culture barrier is not preventing those students from participating in the district's activities or academic strengths or AP classes or whatever they have ongoing. There has to be communication for those students, like all the other students that you have in the school districts, and making sure that they have a chance to participate in all the activities at the school district. The next question is in regards to monitoring those that have exited the English Learner Program for at least 2 years. Making sure that there's a process in place to make sure that you're monitoring those students and that they're not falling again behind or falling between the cracks, and just they might need at one point to go back into the English Learner Program. And that's the question where we lump in the requirement for the English Learner Program evaluation, where you actually have to evaluate your program and making sure that you're disaggregating your data. And there are 10 requirements that we have listed in those in that question as well for the program evaluation. 3 required uses of Title III funds: allowability, enhancing the academic program that you have for the English learner, supplementing those after providing the basics with your general and state local funds. Second required use is the parent engagement, and then the last one is the professional development. Supplement, not supplant, making sure that you're meeting the 10 required civil rights, making sure that you're providing all those with your general and state local funds prior to using your Title III to supplement what you have in place for the English learner students that you have in your classrooms or in districts. Parent notifications, making sure that you're getting required permissions from the parents if their students are participating, taking the screener, making sure that you're communicating everything else to the parents that don't speak the language, and translating those communications for the parents and making sure in a language they understand. Properly certified teachers, making sure that those teachers are properly licensed or certified in the language that in the subject matter that they are teaching, and that they're TESOL endorsed. If you have any paraprofessionals or aides, you want to make sure that they are working under the supervision of a properly certified licensed teacher. Making sure that all the programs and activities that are being implemented with Title III is in compliance with the purpose and the supplement, not supplant provision for Title III. So making sure that they align with what the requirements are and they're ultimately being used for the English learner students and families. And then the last item that we've already mentioned was the program evaluation piece. I have to say, I think most of the virtual on-sites that me and Michael have done have been going very well. I think districts are aware now of the requirements, are doing a much better job with meeting those requirements. We've had just a few technical assistance items, but I think for the most part, things are starting to fall in place, especially for those that have been in the program, aware of the requirements, and just been doing the same type of Title III or English learner programs work for a while now. Any questions so far before I move on to the Title III monitoring that we have for the consortium?
Yes, Ryan, I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned when you were talking about the monitoring and exit EL for at least years, you mentioned to disaggregate data. Can you explain a little bit what data do you need, or what data needs to be disaggregated?
Sure, and I can bring it up to you as well and paste it. Donna or David, feel free to chime in. But you have to look at the student population that for your English learners. You want to make sure that you're breaking it down by special ed. I don't have all the requirements right off the top of my hand, but I'll bring them up for you. But there are requirements, specific requirements, and it has to be disaggregated by special ed, by special needs. And there are a few other requirements as well.
Graduation rates. Yeah, exactly, Rasha. So your basic data will include first what data you collect from your original identification language usage survey. So taking that data along with your assessment data, the progress students are making, those who have taken the assessments over different levels, numbers of years, the number of students who are being monitored, as well as the graduation rate of those English learners. So those would be some key areas to begin with, and of course, whatever is relevant to your situation is also important and considered in the Title III reviews.
Okay, so I will venture to assume that there is guidance, right, regarding this data. I understand that each district will have maybe different data, as you said, according to their priorities and their the specific characteristics of the district. However, is there data related to, is there information or guidance related to this data, like written guidance from ODE?
I just sent it in the chat, Rosanna. Sorry, Donna. But I just sent it in the chat right now, the link for the toolkit and the Dear Colleague letter that mentioned those requirements. And I listed as well the 6 specific requirements that has to be in the English Learner Program Evaluation document.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sorry, Donna.
Nope, that's exactly what I was going to say next. Thanks.
The question about the handbook, it says it's sometimes problematic because pieces aren't spelled out for districts, so they're unsure what to put in the manual. So yes, that's true. There are no specific requirements. Like I said, I've seen it all over. I've seen it all over the place. I've seen like a 1-page, just a brief overview of the English learner evaluation, and I've seen an extensive 50-page document. If it helps, Connie, I can definitely share some samples that I've seen recently in the last, just for this year at least. I know, Donna, which one did we do? Reynoldsburg, I think, and Youngstown. But these would be really 2 big districts, but I'll be more than happy to share them. If anyone else has an English learner program manual or brochure for smaller districts version that they would like to share, please do. I'll be sending out a follow-up email after this meeting with the recording and everything else. So if anybody has that and willing to share it, please feel free to reply back to the whole group and share those. But I have 2 major districts English language program manuals that I'd be happy to share with everybody and with the group, just to set an example. Jill, Dana, do you guys have any program manuals that you'd be willing to share from your groups that kind of stand out?
This is Jill. I have a sample that I use for my small districts, but for big districts, several of them are online, like Pickerington and some others. You can just go right onto their website and see their manuals, which are really good. examples.
Thanks, Jill. If you can share the one for the smaller districts, that would be great, Jill.
Okay, I'll share it later.
Thank you.
So, Rasha, this is Connie. My comment was more directed to the point that we needed some more guidance, I think, from ODE about what needed to be in the manual. We have samples in our consortium of small district manuals, but like you said, they're all over the place. And there's questions about, do we put in parents' rights, for instance? Do we put in district responsibilities? So it was more of a needing more guidance about what needs to be in the program handbook.
Again, it's really up to the districts. I don't want to come out and say you have to have this in your manual when it's truly not required. But I mean, again, maybe we can share. I mean, Donna, David, feedback, anything, any opinion on that?
No opinions, just what you said, Rasha. I mean, we don't have these hard written requirements. These manuals are meant to be developed to be of local use, and in the compliance reviews, that's the view that's taken. It's not a check off that you do and don't have this. However, because we go by the Castaneda requirement that the test is whether the program is effective. So that is where we look backwards from that point. If the family information is important and makes the program effective, then it's required because the district says it's required. And I know that's really may sound not what the districts and the consortia want to hear, but this is the test. Is it effective? And then it should be there.
This is Dana. I basically took the ESSA guidelines obligations for districts, and so all of ours, whether they're small or large consortium members, they have that same format, and it just follows all of the ESSA obligations, and it's set up that way as well. Oh. And then we had parts where they would add their own specific district-specific information. So I had little boxes and areas for them to do that. But basically, we just followed the ESSA guidelines so that we were sure to have everything that we may have needed in there.
I put some comments in the chat. Many of you I remember from when I worked with Title III. But I have moved into assessment now. But I think it's important to think about the manual as a living document, like as your program grows, which is typically the direction or the trend. English learner programs generally get bigger. They don't often get smaller. But as your program matures and develops, so will your manual. You'll start to include additional information. And at first, you might really be creating your manual or your handbook, your written plan to meet the compliance requirements of Title III. But more so, it's intended to be a resource for the educators in your school who serve English learners. It is the document that, brings together the local policies, information about student demographics, perhaps, who are your English learners at whatever district. If you have any policies,
What are you talking about? What?
If you have any local policies, or if you want everyone at your school to understand how to identify English learners, how to exit English learners, it just becomes a resource for your program. And you can describe your uses of Title III funds in there. Like if you have a parent liaison program, you might want to describe that briefly so that anyone who comes across your handbook can understand these Title III programs that you have going. So I don't think it's out of the question to have a guidance document from the department. But like Rasha said, there is a lot of discretion as to what exactly goes into it. I think we could identify some best practices, but it is sort of open-ended. you have a lot of local control in what your program is. And then, of course, if you're writing about it, what that written description of your program entails.
Yeah, and going back to what Jill from the Central Ohio ESC said, you know, it should be placed on the department website. It should be out there, not just for the Title III, but used as part of the district communications to its community.
Hi, this is Nancy Osco. Hi, everybody. It also, if they're writing a local literacy plan or a reading improvement plan, or if they're required under law to write a reading achievement plan, that's one of the diverse learner groups that is specifically called out. So that could be a subset or an action step on writing that plan. And a part of it, it really should be, at least for instructional purposes, a part of those plans.
Thanks, Nancy. Any other comments or questions regarding that? I know there was a comment. Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, so earlier up in the chat, David had asked, you know, out of all of these monitoring pieces, which is the most complicated or difficult for districts? And for the EL program evaluation, all the different data points that we need to collect for that. So a data guy from my office has graciously created a tool for our districts to upload their information, but it would be really nice if the department could create some kind of tool that it automatically pulls it from EMIS rather than districts hand entering it. It's fine for my districts with 5 to 10 English learners, but once you get up into the 200s to, you know, go through your documents to determine how many identified English learners are in gifted classes or in CCP classes, and that gets a little bit cumbersome for the districts. So it'd be really nice if there was some kind of tool that we could just pull from data that we're already marking that information in EMIS, so that would be great.
Rosanna, did you have a follow-up comment? I know you have your hands raised.
Mine? Sorry? Oh,
your hands is raised. It might have been for the first question.
No, but I totally, I forgot to put it down, but I totally agree with that comment. I think that if the data is already there should be a way to pull it down, like to run a report. That will simplify and unify the way we are reporting, or the way the ODE is seeing all this information. And you know, we are what I see with my districts is that everybody's doing it the way they think it is best, and that is okay. However, if there is a uniform way to pull down the data from something that ODE already has, I think it will simplify everything for everybody. I'm not familiar with the system. I'm not sure if there are ways to run programs and run reports, but if that is something that can be done, that would be wonderful, I think, for everybody.
I think I understand the desire, and hi, by the way, I'm David Brower in the Office of Assessment. I think that we understand the desire for it to be streamlined and an efficient process, but think of EMIS, I mean, if the districts put in the results into EMIS that they want to draw down, you guys already have the data. I mean, so what are you, EMIS is more of a way to report information to the department in a systematic, organized way than it is to be like a multi-level database where information is going in and out. It's more so a way to funnel information to the Department of Education so that we can meet reporting requirements for state and federal educational programs. So if districts are the ones who are putting the information into EMIS to communicate it to the department, you already have all the data you would need to put into a program evaluation, for example.
Well, David, I would argue with that point in that, you know, we're entering this data into EMIS so that you have it all neat and tidy in one place to show compliance to the federal government. However, we don't have it all in one place because there's so much that we have to enter in EMIS, yet we have to show you that we're paying attention to this data. And so we have to put it in a nice, tidy little form that is separate from what we're putting into EMIS. So it would be nice, similarly, like you have EMIS with all the required pieces that you need to report. If we were able just to extract those pieces somehow, because a lot of the districts have an EMIS person, they're just given this information, they're uploading it all, and we don't have it all in one place because there's so many points that need to be entered. Is that kind of making sense what I'm talking about? We don't have it in a one document or one form to show you that we're paying attention like we need to create for this program evaluation, I guess is my point.
And to be fair, there was a time that we provided AMOs and all of that data to each district. For those of you who have been here for a while, that the data was provided by the department to each district for progress for English learners for Title III.
Yeah, so I don't know if there is a plan down there. I don't think that there's such a plan for OD to do that and down the road. But I know that our office in general has been working on the one needs assessment. And that piece alone, I think, is incorporating a lot of the vulnerable youth population data into looking at the big picture, including those population and including the English learners. The way I've seen it, Dana, recently on the on-site, and I can't remember which on-site, but I can get you more information. But it's honestly up to each school district what kind of software they have to look at their specific data for populations that they have in their districts. I know Youngstown was one of the really, I want to say almost perfect on-site that we've recently had with them. And they had really nice software that they were able to look at their English learner data and actually dig deeper and deeper and meet the requirements that we were asking for in their program evaluation. Again, those softwares probably are expensive and it's really going to depend on one district to another. But I think most of the districts now have gone through the OIP process, have leadership teams in place, have BLTs and DLTs in place that have some kind of sort of software that they use or look at when they look at their students' data. But again, I don't know how far ODE is going to look down the road. Maybe after that one needs assessment project and the one plan is over, maybe that would be something else that they will look at to kind of give the districts ownership to dig deeper in their data and have a one-page overview, like what their data looks like. I think we can move on. The next item topic that we have on the agenda for me is the Title III Consortium Monitoring. So way back, I'm going to go to the history of that a little bit. There was no monitoring for Title III consortiums. And then I know David Brower came on board when he started working with Title III and he created one. And then it was moved to our office, Title III, and the allocation space and everything. And our leadership in our office were like, why are we monitoring the consortiums? It's not typically, it was dropped. And then we had grants management, and our grants management leadership office came back and said, we're starting to get questions from the auditors, and they've had several, and they're not, there's only a handful of consortium probably in the department. The only one I'm aware of that is Title III and Special Ed. I don't know, and I can't remember the other ones that we have in the department, but there's not many. But anyway, we've had collaborative meeting with the grants management office and other offices that we do need to monitor the consortium, and we need to go back to the consortium monitoring to have an effect for the consortium that do have Title III members. So we worked back on those questions, and again, it's not, we tried, me and Donna and David, no, me, Donna and Michael, We've met several times, and we try to honestly minimize the burden on the consortium as much as we can. We kind of only narrowed it down to 6 requirements that we've kept in place, and just try to minimize the documents and we will work with the fiscal agent that's handling the consortium when we do have the monitoring. They were, again, because of the switch to the new monitoring system, it actually has not came out live yet. IT is finalizing last few pieces in it. It was one of the last questions, monitoring questions IT was working on. It should be coming out live as soon as they can. I was told sometime within this week or next week. So once that's in place, then I'll contact you and let you know. Well, it's probably late. It's May. We do realize that. But I think we will have at least 1 or 2 for this year, and then moving forward, we'll figure out how to do the risk factors and what to do specifically for the monitoring process for Title III consortiums. I'll go over the questions quickly. Just feel free to step in if you have questions, if you have recommendations moving forward of what needs to be there, what needs to be, please let me know. I'll work with you, and we'll work with you to make sure that you have everything in place. So the first question is really obvious, is just making sure that the fiscal agent supports the consortium members and the implementation of the required and authorized sub-grantee activities of the ESSA sections 3115C and 3115D. So obviously making sure that the fiscal agent is supporting their members. You have the completed Title III participation forms for the current year in place. You have at least a summary of the current numbers, the English learners. You're aware of your members' English learners numbers, how many students they've identified, and just making sure that there's evidence in place that you are providing them with guidance, whether it's documentation, invitations to meeting, agendas, minutes, whatever you have, just showing them that you are providing them guidance and support as far as Title III and how to draw down and spend those money. Question 2 that we have in place is regarding consulting with your members to making sure that you are questioning their needs and making sure that you have a plan in place that addresses that needs. So just making sure that you're working with them. That could be through a survey, just the basic answers to some questions. How many EL students do you have? What languages do they speak? What's their level? Are they progressing? What kind of PD do you have in place? What kind of your PD, your English learner teachers are looking for? Just anything that you have in place to show them that you're looking at their data closely and making sure that you're actually meeting their needs using their Title III funds. Just working with them, describing what kind of process you've met. Have you had meetings? Have you analyzed their data? Did they provide you with any report or anything that they have ongoing in their district as far as their English learners plans and what they have? An important piece of that is making sure that they have the basic English learner program in place. We've been running into several issues where school districts don't have that. They have a very small numbers of English learners, and they have nothing in place out of general and local state funds, and they're just basically using Title III to meet the needs of those English learners, and by doing that, they're basically violating the civil rights. So you want to make sure that they have something in place, and you're helping them use their Title III money to just supplement whatever English learner program that they have in place, and not supplant by any means and violates the civil rights for those students. Copy of the service plan that you have, agreement, the MOU that you have in place, if that lists out what kind of minimum, like these are the minimum things that you should be expected by joining our consortium. 2 meetings, family engagement, library. Whatever you have in place. I know most of you have been there and have been around for long enough that they probably have basic number of meetings, basic number of PD going on, and so on, that you can provide your members in the agreement upfront. You don't have to, but just an example for what you can provide. And then the end of the year evaluation, and just making sure that you're assisting them looking at their data and disaggregating it like we talked about now. Again, the next question is making sure that they are using their funds to provide effective professional development to the classroom teachers, principals, administrators, or basically anyone in the classroom or anyone in the building that comes in contact or does have frequent contact with their English learner students and population. So just making sure that you do have a providing with effective professional development. And they can use their Title III obviously for that. Fiscal information, making sure that you're working with them on updating them. Okay, this is how much you spent, this is how much you have left. Especially this last year, I know we're expecting a lot of carryover because of COVID and because of everything else, the online and all of that, what happened. So you want to make sure that you're continuously communicating with your members and making sure that they're kept up to date on their fiscal information, how much they've drawn down, where they've spent their money, and how much they have left. If it's a monthly basis, quarterly basis, whatever you have set in your fiscal department, working with the treasurer, just make sure that you're communicating that piece with your members. So you can provide us with that communication that you have, provide us with account history report, budget, whatever you have in place on how much your consortium members are drawing down or spending and how much is being left. The first question is really regarding to making sure that you are effectively implementing the Title III plan and just, again, making sure that you're drawing down the money. So just showing us what you have in the budget details page, how you're using effectively the Title III to meet the requirements of the Title III without supplanting, and just showing us that you're working with your consortium members and drawing down those funds. Anything that you have in place would really suffice. The last one is making sure that you have your non-public equitable service. I know that does not affect a lot of you, and that's why I had not applicable at the end, but there are a few members that do have non-publics that are in their boundaries, and those non-public generate a non-public equitable service amount that you want to make sure that those non-public students, teachers are being involved in the family engagement piece and the PD piece and so on. So just making sure that you are meeting the requirements for the non-public piece. And I am ready for questions on this part.
I have a question about the non-publics.
Sure, Dana, please go ahead.
So with our LEAs, we're required to kind of monitor their implementation of Title III and make sure that they're following all the guidelines and rules and everything. Mm-hmm. But with non-pubs, how does that fit in there? Because they typically they don't always have the same requirements, and they kind of do their own thing. And how does that work when we want to make sure that students' needs are being met, but they're not held to the same requirements, but they're in our LEA's geographical region? So what is our responsibility with those non-publics who may not be doing the best practices to promote language and academic success for the students?
So it could vary all across the board and when it comes to the non-publics. And yes, they're not held accountable like the public school district. So I think Paula was just asking me and Chantel, who is the non-public ombudsman, about the consequences for the non-public if they don't do the assessment. Or they don't do the screener or the home language survey, and there's truly none. They are not required to do that. They can do their own screener, they can use their own assessment, and they can use Title III funds, their equitable service amount, to do those things. When it's a definite no for the public school districts, they can't do that. It's supplanting, but for the non-publics, they are. So making sure all you really want to do, it's really going to come down to the kind of relationship that your public school district member has with that non-public. Some school districts have a really close working relationship with their non-publics because they know that those students are eventually going to end up in the public school districts. Others don't. So it's really going to come down to what kind of relationship your member has with their own non-public and whether they are within close enough boundaries that they can actually send one of their English learner teachers, for example, to work with their English learner students at the non-public school or so on. But again, there's no requirements for them as far as the screener, as far as the WELPA assessment or the or the home language survey, but they have to have a process in place. So it's really the public school districts, I would say, that would need to work with their non-publics. Your responsibility as a consortium fiscal agent would ultimately be just making sure that that non-public equitable service amount is being spent. If the non-public equitable service amount is not being spent, it has to be carried over on top of the new non-public equitable service amount. So if X school had $500, for example, as a non-public equitable service, they did not spend it, and then they had another non-public equitable service of a new $500 in FY22, then in FY22 you should be spending $1,000 for that non-public equitable service. That non-public equitable service cannot be by default taken away and rolled into the public school district's Title III amount just because it was not spent. It has to stay in the non-public till it just expires and then we move on. Again, I would recommend talking with the non-public. Usually it's the principal at the non-public level that handles that. A lot of the non-publics, unfortunately, will not have a process to start with, depending on where it is. Again, I can't say that. But we've seen it a lot, and Chantel has been working through with them and making sure that they have a process in place to work with their English learners. But they can use their Title III non-public equitable service amount to do a screener, to pay for an assessment if they don't want to use our state one, and so on, unlike for the public school district. Yes, Bill, we will send a copy of that presentation, and it's being reported because I had few that were not able to attend, so I'll make sure that it's being posted in the CCIP documents library, and they'll send you a link. No, there's no percentage for how much you can carry over. It expires after 27 months. It expires after 27 months, but there's no limit on how much you carry over. But we are expecting a high carryover this year, generally in a lot of the grants because of COVID and because of the additional stimulus funds that came out all over the place because of COVID as well. But no, there's no limitation. It's not like Title I when you have 15% only. It's you can carry over the full amount if you wanted to. Are you right on time? Am I running late? I don't have a copy of the agenda in front of me. Any other questions before I move on? Again, I know it's really late in the fiscal year, but IT has just been swamped working with all those new applications, and just the Title III consortium piece was not really on their priority list. So they just finalized the questions for me very recently, and it's going to be going into production. And then me, Donna, and Michael will meet and discuss and see, I mean, in those upcoming few months, if we can just have one or two just reviewed, we'll be very flexible, I promise. And then starting next year, we'll have an official process in place to start it from the very beginning of the fiscal year. So let me just bring up the agenda real quick. I want to make sure how much time I have left. Okay, good. So I still have like 10, 15 minutes.
There's a few questions in the chat, maybe before you get into these family engagement activities. Rosanna asks, do the districts do the non-public schools access their funds by submitting a purchase order to the fiscal agent or to the district?
They can do either, but ultimately you are the fiscal agent. You are the one responsible for the funds. So I would assume you probably need to be in the picture. If it's mostly the public school district that's working with the non-public, then I would say when it comes to the financial piece, you still want to make sure that you do have an oversight. Again, as far as allowable activities, the non-public has a little bit more flexibility than the public school districts, but you want to make sure that it's still allowable Title III related to English learners, and they're not just getting supplies for whatever, for the building or for whatever else is needed. So you want to make sure that you still have that financial oversight. And you're still being involved, and ultimately you are in control of the funds, so you will be the one paying those. So you want to make sure that it is allowable, legit, and a proper PO that's being submitted for you to pay.
Right. I understand that, Rasha, and if I may, I have an additional question. So if I am not understanding correctly, the non-public, let's say they decide to spend their funds in materials like so the PO for the to get reimbursed for those funds goes to the fiscal agent directly or through the district. I know that I saw the answer right now that some of them do it through the district, but is there guidance saying that it has to be or one way or the other?
No, there's really not, because every fiscal agent really operates differently. We have some that are just basically kind of a pass-through fiscal agents that just, just minimal oversight. We have others that are really heavily involved with their members and just have a much more powerful oversight when it comes to spending down and drawing down their funds, because they know that the fiscal agent ultimately is responsible for those money. But there's really no rules on how you want to do it. I would say, again, you're ultimately in control. Yes, the program is being implemented in the public or the non-public, but as far as fiscal pieces and money pieces, you're really the one in control. So you want to make sure that it is allowable. If they want to go through the LEA, like Dina suggested, I have no problem in doing that, but you want to make sure that you still have that oversight piece and it's an allowable expense and not just any haphazard PO that they've submitted. No, I have not shared the date when everything have to be submitted for the consortium participants. Like I said earlier in the meeting, we only submitted the data request for the data manager last week. I haven't heard back from him yet. So we're still waiting on the data. As I get that data, I will make sure I share those reported numbers even before we share the allocations. I mean, it's public data, so I can let you know how much the districts are reporting or reported in EMIS as of last October. And you can kind of get an estimate and just start working with them. The allocations are typically available early June, by mid-June the latest. That's when it gets dropped in the CCIP. In your case and in your members' case, it's not going to show up in the CCIP because they do not have a $10,000 allocations of Title III or more. I will communicate with you the file like I've typically done in the past once that data and the allocations file is available. I mean, most of you have honestly had the same members and just in the 2 years that I've been working with this group. But it's plus or minus a few different members that dropped, and just we only had one consortium that kind of just was gone. The ESC dropped the whole consortium, but then we had another member that picked a few members and came on board. Other than that, it's been pretty stable, but I'll just share the allocations file once I have it. And what I've done in the past is that as you have your members finalized, you send me the file and I upload them as we go. And then you upload the MOU or the agreement in the CCIP budget details page with the signatures as you submit your CCIP budget. I think I've answered all the questions. I don't see any other ones in the chat. Okay. I won't go into much details, but like I mentioned earlier, a lot of you that do have a consortium in FY21 have received an additional money from Donna Villarreal's office regarding family engagement specifically. So I thought it would be a good fit to share what the few members of the English Learner Advisory Council shared in our last OASSEP presentation last month. It was very well received, and I think we always kind of look for new ideas and things that we can do for family engagement, especially for the English learners population. A lot of them, I'm not going to go into much details. I'll have the PowerPoint available for you. I'll email it to you, and then I'll make sure that I post the webinar recording as well. But a lot of things might be common: the monthly newsletter, the YouTube messages. I'm sure with the virtual world now, a lot of districts have gone to text messages, just IT technology things instead of being in person. Webinars, Zoom meetings, virtual meetings that they've had for the parents to educate them about what's happening and give them out information about things that they've typically have had one-on-one personal meetings before, but now because of COVID, they can't. Back to school fair, that was something at one point that most of the districts probably had, when you actually just explain to them what to do, the money lunches, how to get access, academic information, how to report, and just the basic things that you would assume any parent would know, but a lot of those English learners might be new to the country, might be new to the school districts, and just are not familiar with how things are being done. Big book clubs was another example that they have mentioned and talked about, especially for a culturally diverse population. You want to make sure that you are picking out books that are just appropriate, easy to understand, especially for language barriers, families that might have into that issue. A morning math club was another resource that they have shared, just making sure that you are bringing in the parents and the family and the students to make sure that you're talking about the math curriculum. Families with Power is basically was just making sure or trying to at least put the English learner families in leadership positions, either starting English learners families groups, inviting an English learner parent to either a board meeting or a PDO meeting, and just making sure that they are getting involved and not being left out because of the language or the culture barrier. Family ambassador is something that they have talked about, which is very similar to the family liaison, which you can see right here has a much more extensive description and list and job duties and might be a paid position. But the family ambassador is more of a volunteer based, where they just can serve as a liaison, and it's not as intensive as the family liaison official title. Most of the school districts, bigger ones, have family liaison that works with their English learners' families and just kind of communicate the needs, whatever is there that might be a barrier between the families and the school district. A community service fair was something that they have talked about. Was a service fair was something else that they talked about because of the nature of those family and the culture barriers. It's always a good idea to make sure that they're aware of the services that they can provide. If there is a church, if there is a mosque, if there's a family agency, compensation for unemployment, things basics that you would consider, you know how to go there, where to get that help, but they probably don't, especially if they're new to the community. So having that kind of a service fair, or at least giving them resources or listing those community services on the website, just giving them access to those things would be helpful for sure. Bringing in former EL guests as a guest speaker, talking about their experiences, how they were able to get familiar with the system, what kind of challenges they have met, and just making sure that they are talking to the new ones that are coming on board. That's always helpful, and they can probably relate to those former EL guest speakers. Making sure that they have the Learn English and Citizenship meeting. That's something that's common as well with the migrant program that I work with. They are always looking for legal advice. So just again, making sure that you have those resources available for them, or even offering them to come into your computer lab and just showing how to get to that information is always a great idea as well to assist them. DECA help also has to do with the legal help, and depending on where those families are coming from, whether they're legal or not legal, or documentation, which you can't ask for, but if you felt like there is a need for this, so it's always a good idea to make sure that you have that information available for them as well. Writing for Life is another example that they talked about, having a computer lab, helping them working with resumes, applying for jobs, or just filling out forms in general is always a good idea. And then last but not least is a social emotional resource fair, which I think a lot of school districts are implementing for their even general ed students, not necessarily just the English learners. But there's definitely a need to make sure that you're working with those families that have anxiety, stress, or trauma, and making sure that they're being, those needs are being met as well, not just the academic piece. Just last is Title III can also be used for any of those. These are all great family engagement ideas. All of them would definitely be supplemental. Title III could be used for them for any cost associated with any of those activities, for transportation, even for childcare if there is a need for that for those families. But it's always an option to provide those extra family engagement activities for those families that's really in need. The 15% that most of you have received this year, definitely those are just ideas for them. But once those funds are gone, you are more than welcome to use Title III for those activities, supplemental activities as well.
And Rasha, thank you for mentioning about that 15%, those 15% of total funds for family engagement. Those do need to be obligated and spent by the end of June. So if you have not done that, and about 80% of the funds have not yet been spent, according to our records, please go ahead and move forward with spending those funds.
Any questions so far? I'm here till the end of the meeting, of course. You have my email. If you want to reach me at any time, please feel free to do that.
Rasha, would it be okay to take a 3-minute break and start up at 10:15 since we've gone straight through?
Sure. I know I've been going through a lot, sorry.
No, it was great.
But yes, absolutely. Let's do a couple of minutes or 3 minutes. Just make sure that you're back, by 10:15, and we'll pick it up from there.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Rasha, if you can stop screen sharing, I would love to drive.
Absolutely. I knew you would ask for that. You're welcome.
So David, are you going to push the slides forward for me?
Oh, yes, that is the plan. What do you think about that?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds okay. I just wanted to be sure because I could put it up also, and
Up to you. You do have a few video slides. I didn't know if you wanted them. So
yeah, but it will be a lot, right?
And if you want to show one of those or all three of them, or
not all three. Let's do the first one if it loads and see how that starts out to give a flavor for it, and then folks can come back to it because of the time. For some reason, I don't see the chat on mine. I have to go into my phone to see the chat. Does that happen to you at all ever? Like you're just not seeing the chat?
I can see it.
Yeah, I see it, but you have a couple screens up, right? I think it's like,
Donna, that's happened to me before.
yeah, you're
Yeah, I've not been able to see the chat. I can on this one, but
okay.
that has happened to me. So I don't know why that happens.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was some like scrolling to the edges of the screen. So you guys feel free to answer in the chat. I'll also check. I just put something on my phone Teams. I hope it posted. It's a link to the standards from the CCSSO, the alternative.
It posted.
All right. Okay, that's good. So there's some workarounds there. Okay, it's about 10:15. We should get started then. Guys ready? I see David shaking his head with that flag behind. Yeah, I can see you. That's good. Yeah, I'm just looking at what I can see here. I see Paula's beautiful flowers, Russia. Welcome back, everyone. If you hope you stretched out a little bit, we'll take it to the end here till 11. David, Paula, and I grateful to Russia and for their leadership for the Title III Consortia. And we know that you've been super busy and making a lot of efforts, especially this time with all these events happening, graduations and Mother's Day, Ramadan and Eid coming up. We thank you for your efforts and really want to recognize that as we move forward. The first thing we're going to talk about as we bring in some updates, and so you've talked a lot about the nuts and bolts of getting your funds and meeting with your districts, non-publics, publics. That's critical to make things happen. But as far as what will you be talking about or what will you be addressing in the upcoming months and year, we wanted to give some ideas on that. And so the first is the English language proficiency standards and English language proficiency standards extended. From there, David and Paula will walk through the assessments that are based upon those English language proficiency standards extended and assessment accommodations for English learners in general. So the English language proficiency standards extended, this may be a new phrase for you. It's a long one. It's a long one. We are working very hard in the first place to talk about English language proficiency standards in general for all programs of English learners and for all teachers to be aware of. So the English Learner Advisory Committee and the work groups have been working to help us focus upon letting districts know, large and small, that there are English language proficiency standards that need to be recognized by the English language program, the English language learner program, as well as the general education program. And as Nancy Usko and Lorraine mentioned, in all of the literacy work that is going on. So we also have now English language proficiency standards extended, just as we have the Ohio learning standards extended across subject areas or content areas of English language arts and math, social studies and science. We now have English language proficiency standards extended, meaning that they reach across in complexity for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And why do we have these English language proficiency standards extended? As we've been talking about, and Dana mentioned that they refer to the ESSA as their baseline of what you have to have for your Title III. And in the Code for Federal Regulations, the CFR, ESSA requires that all students be included in the state's assessment processes. And so that includes students with significant cognitive disabilities and English learners with significant cognitive disabilities. In response to this federal requirement to include all students, the U.S. Department of Education issued language stating that states may develop alternate English language proficiency assessment standards for the required alternate assessment for English language learners. And thus we have the English language proficiency standards extended for the alternate assessment. And they join, as you see at the bottom, that group of Ohio's extended standards of all content areas. So if a student is first an English learner and second a student who's been identified as a student with a significant cognitive disability, and this is on part of the IEP process, then they are a student who would take the Ohio Extended Standards, including the English Language Proficiency Extended Standards. So just to summarize quickly, some of the key issues as we go into the year, talking about what these extended standards relate to when we identify English learners. English learners by definition, they have communication challenges. That is, communication challenges because of home language being different other than English, which is the language of instruction in the state. But students with significant cognitive disabilities also have significant communication challenges that are diverse and range from disabilities that relate to having little or no communication, expressive or receptive communication skills, to having significant and well-developed communication skills that are connected with a significant cognitive disability. And so the communication challenges are broad for these students, for this population, and the services will be overlapping with intervention services, overlapping with the creation of the individualized education program. And when we talk about this population of students, we estimate, and it varies, where it will get more specific as our identification process becomes more standardized, but 500 to 1,000 students who are English learners with significant cognitive disabilities may be affected by and taking these tests in the future. So that's, if you think about Ohio having a general 4% of the students in Ohio are English learners, that's average, ranging from less than 1% to 25-30% in districts or more. Students who take the alternate assessment are 1.75% of the entire population. And yet, out of that, then English learners who have significant cognitive disabilities are less than 1% of all students who take Ohio's tests. So it's a small number of students, and yet a very, very important piece of the puzzle here, as well as they will provide us with some important resources for addressing students' needs. Students with significant cognitive disabilities have difficulties conceptualizing or doing higher order thinking skills, being able to, in the content areas, being able to connect this with English language proficiency and the whole transition process, school to work process for English learners. So we anticipate that it will be a rich time for for all students because of the work that this population of students is helping us to engage in. One of the partners who have helped us is the Alternate English Language Learning Assessment Group, Altella. Altella project was funded by the federal government several years ago. They have closed their funding of the project, but they have put out all of their resources online. So you can go to the Altella website and find resources about this population of students and the research that they did with states that included Ohio about what was actually happening with English learners with significant cognitive disabilities. And one of their major findings was that English learner teachers and TESOL specialists were not being included in the process for these students. They were being handled solely by the special education services, oftentimes with little or no attention to the English language proficiency development and development of the student and cultural differences with the families. You'll see this framework for English learners with significant cognitive disorders as a way of describing the diversity of the population, because we have different intersecting areas. As I mentioned earlier, there are students who may have, if you look on the right side, high English language needs and high disability related needs, both together. There may be students who may have high disability related needs. And here we're talking about disability related needs that range from, physical needs for supports, for physical movement, sensory needs, accessibility, just the range of special education services. Those often overlap and combine with the need for English language services. And then on the left side, you have the lower disability related needs, where students may not need those supports for, I guess we mentioned sensory or physical access, handicapped access, separate classrooms, but they may still have the high English language needs, and they may need special communication devices, for example, or sign language, or they may have low English language needs, but just need the English language proficiency development. They have the speaking and the listening and the reading and writing, but they need extra supports for that within their abilities. So this framework hopefully will provide some idea of the diversity of the group. And as we go next to reminding about the English language proficiency standards, the extended ones will have the same grade bands as the current English language proficiency standards. The extended ones will have the same grade bands, and they will also have an additional piece of high to low cognitive complexity, taking into account that. So again, just helping teachers to have a common point of reference when talking about planning for students. And this document that is the document that was put together by the CCSSO, or Council for Chief State School Officers, and will become Ohio's document with Ohio connections to Ohio's learning standards, will be published in summer, this upcoming summer 2021. And you can see, perhaps just to give an idea of, we just looked at that kind of cross diagram of the framework for English learners with significant cognitive disabilities. Oh, sorry, David. Yeah, and this is a sample of what that document will look like. You'll have the learning standard on the left, just like the other Ohio learning standards, and you'll have the complexities, complexity A through C, complexity A being the most complex. So providing a proficiency indicator for English language development, as well as a sample of, for each complexity, moving out to the least complex, some activities that may be done in the lesson plan, planned in the lesson plan and done in the instruction for teachers to refer to and to use as part of their formative assessment. Again, the purpose of this is to have to create some greater standardization, as Connie mentioned, like we need more specific guidance. This is a step towards more specific guidance, albeit a small step, but it gives us something we can refer to and to begin to classify this diverse group by complexities. As you may, and just to remind you, as you know, these students have already been required to take the current English language proficiency assessments. And we have gotten the feedback again and again that these are not meaningful. So these learning standards here allow students to find a place to enter into the assessment process to get information about their English language proficiency and to develop programs. So then
Donna, there's a question in the chat
I can't see
Rosanna. She just wonders, are these standards only for English learners with cognitive disabilities, or how can districts go about using them when they do become available this summer?
That's a great question. Yeah. So the standards, again, are for that population of students with significant cognitive disabilities. They are the basis for that assessment. But yeah, definitely the work that has been done here can be used to inform and enrich the current discussions. What I would be cautious about is limiting a student who has not been placed in this significant cognitive disability population to be using them only as the only standard. They should be used as points of entry. We recommend that they be used as points of entry, including the other extended standards for the other academic areas that you'll find on the department website, such as math and English language arts. We've heard that those can be very useful. But as you know, we have also to be very careful in what we are saying here. The students who are English learners are not students with disabilities per se, and so English language learning needs to be looked at within that realm of English language or language development, and not in special education. But absolutely, I would say use them and integrate them where they're useful, and that you see those connections is a great thing, that you already see that this is right. This is what we need, especially for students who may come to us with limited or interrupted formal education or any other factors where they need those extra supports.
Right. I just want to mention something here because you mentioned that this will be tied to an IEP and a process of identification for special education. And that is basically what I do in the districts that are surrounding to my ESC, that are within my ESC. I do the evaluation of students, English learners with disabilities. And when you talk about cognitive disabilities, this condition can be within different identification categories. So you can have a student with multiple disabilities that has a cognitive disability. You can have a student that is identified on their speech language impairment, and that is a cognitive disability. You have students that go under other health impairment who have a cognitive disability. So I'm just thinking ahead and worrying that the services or the use of the alternate standards will be tied to identification, or just to make sure that the identification category is not what we are using to give the students these alternate standards. I don't know if
we've had some data that shows that when we checked what students might be taking, who are English learners might be taking an alternate, they ranged across all of the categories of disabilities that and the issue. Well, I think it is a point of a lot of discussion, like whether that would be like whether a student with a learning disability would be taking the alternate assessment in English language proficiency. But to not go into that now, but to answer your question, the student would need to be taking the other alternate assessments and have that on their IEP, that is the test, that it would not be separated. You wouldn't take the alternate English language proficiency assessment and then not take the alternate other assessments. And so here we're linked at that population is linked together. There should, is that kind of where you're going with that help right now?
I think yes, I guess that we will start seeing more of it as we start using these alternate standards, because I foresee there's going to be a lot of confusion. So one of the things that I face when I do these evaluations is that when I see the need for specially designed instruction in English language proficiency, there is a lot of resistance. It's like, oh no, that doesn't fall into special education. So that you cannot include that in the needs for specially designed instruction. So there is a lot of conversations that are going on in different directions when we want to pair a student with a disability with English language instruction. But I guess that since this is new, we are going to start seeing how this develops and maybe continue with the conversations as we go on.
Thanks, Farzan. I think that is helpful to hear your perspective on that and the need we will all have to communicate this clearly and to find out what areas need to be better fleshed out and provided with guidance. Yeah.
And Donna, maybe we have a video. I have it queued up that
Right.
shows, the students who these standards are developed for, and does depict who would be eligible to take the alternate English language proficiency assessment, which I'll be talking about briefly. Should we play that video?
Yeah, David. Yeah, please. And that could just segue. So as David's starting that, just think to yourself about maybe that high disabilities needs with high English learner needs, where the two students here would fit on that framework. And this is on the Altella website, so you can access these videos also there and use them in your meetings or professional development.
All right. I think I have the sound turned on, so let's see how this goes.
Okay. Thanks. I hear that.
My name is Turkai. I'm 19 years old. I go to Red High School.
What do you do at WCER?
I deliver mails. I clean common areas, restock papers, water the plants.
What do you like about your job?
I like restocking the papers. I love doing mails.
Do you like being able to help everybody in the office?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you like helping?
It keeps them healthy.
Keeps them healthy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like working with all the other people?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
What do you like about working? Do you like talking with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're not working, when you're at home, what do you do for fun?
I play outside. I play on the PlayStation 4. I watch TV,
What do you like to watch on TV?
like The Hulk.
The Hulk?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Yeah.
Can you spell it for me?
Yeah.
Miguel. Awesome.
Yeah.
And how old are you, Miguel?
Yeah.
22? 21.
Yeah.
You're 21. What do you like about working here?
Yeah.
What do you like best? Can you spell it?
Yeah.
M A I L. Miguel likes doing the mail. He likes delivering it, and he puts it on his tray and carries it downstairs. T A M A R A. Tamara.
Yeah.
B L A K E. Blake.
Yeah.
So Miguel likes working.
Yeah.
Oh, is Tamara somebody you work with?
Yeah.
Okay, so Miguel likes working with all of his different job coaches.
Yeah.
S.A. Sam.
Yeah.
Yep, and Sarah is another one. Do you like working with all your job coaches? Do you like working with Chikai?
Yeah.
So we help these guys do their jobs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. With all the people here in the office, not your job coaches, but everyone here in the office.
Yeah.
Do you like working with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you like working
Yeah.
with them? Is it because they always talk to you and say hi?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're always very nice.
Yeah.
Some of them you're teaching
Yeah.
sign, right? Some of them are learning sign so they can talk to you,
Yeah.
which is really cool. M. O. Mom. What about mom?
Yeah.
What about mom? I. Oh, iPad. Oh, so he's saying when he's not at work, he likes being with his mom, and he likes being on his iPad. Jay.
Yeah.
Jay.
Yeah.
J-U. June. Just counting down the months. Your birthday?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. S-W-I. Swimming? You're gonna go swimming in June?
Yeah.
And you're very excited about that?
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that you do when you're not at work.
Thanks, David. So leave with that. Just again, coming the standards, alternate standards, extended standards for the English language proficiency standards, and the accompanying alternate assessments, which we'll be talking about here. Some resources from Altella are linked into our website or into our PowerPoint here, and we can continue on from here.
Great. Thank you. So in the next set of slides, I want to talk about give you some information about the alternate OELPA, right? So Donna just described the extended English language proficiency standards, and those are going to be the basis for this new assessment. The state of Ohio is working with the Collaborative for the Alternate Assessment of English Language Proficiency. And you see that acronym in parentheses there, CILP. This is a sister organization of ELPA 21. ELPA 21 is the group of states that Ohio worked with to develop the OELPA, right, our annual English language proficiency assessment, and the OELPS, the screener to identify English learners. Now, Ohio is working in a similar group of states to develop an alternate assessment of English language proficiency for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. And you just saw that video of a couple students who might qualify for this assessment. And then across the bottom of the screen, you see the name of that new assessment that's being developed by the CILP Collaborative. It'll be known as the ALT-OELPA. So we have 10 states working together on this multi-year grant. We have our 7 ELPA 21 states, which are Oregon, Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Louisiana, Ohio, and West Virginia. But for this special alternate assessment development grant, we have added Arizona, New York, and Connecticut. So that it's great that we have these states, kind of joining the ELPA 21 family, the CILP group, to develop this assessment, because New York especially brings many students to the collaborative, to the CILP group. So here you can see the number of English learners with the most significant cognitive disabilities by state. So it would not be cost efficient or necessarily a valid way to develop an assessment if each state worked individually. There simply aren't enough students in any one state represented by this group to go through the assessment development process. But when we pool our resources, both financial and also, human resources, and our student resources, our student populations together, we have over 10,000 English learners with significant cognitive disabilities around which to develop this assessment. Here's a timeline to provide an overview of the work being conducted by CILP, that collaborative of states working together. So we started in October of 2019, and that first year was mainly planning and getting all the vendors identified and identifying who at each state is going to be working in CILP. So that is myself, David Brower, and then also Wendy Stoika, who some of you might know. She coordinates or manages our alternate assessment program of Ohio State Test, Math, English Language Arts, Science, Social Studies. Well, she and I are collaborating on this project to develop an alternate English language proficiency assessment. This year, we've begun writing items, specifications, and templates. We're actually writing items for the test and thinking through all the different facets of assessment design so that next year, we'll finish item development and can actually try out or pilot some of those items, right? This English learner group of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities is relatively small in Ohio, but it's very diverse. And there are a variety of disabilities, as you saw, just represented by those two students in the video, that we need to accommodate. So we need to create items that can accommodate students who use alternate communication devices or that use sign, students that have not only cognitive disabilities, but physical disabilities as well. So there's a great variety of students to make sure that the items work. So next year, we'll be trying out those test items to see how well students can perform if they're able to respond to the items as they were intended to be responded to. And then all that is in preparation for the last year of the grant on the far right, the 22-23 school year, will actually have an operational field test. So students who are eligible English learners with the most significant cognitive disabilities will get to take the ALT-OELPA, and that will satisfy their requirement to take the English language, to take a English language proficiency test. Every year, English learners must have their English language proficiency assessed, and the results of that assessment are used for accountability measures to check to see if districts, right, the districts in your consortia, if they're meeting their requirements of accountability. Based on the results of the field test, we'll set the standards. There are typically 5 scores for each domain test. If you're familiar with the OELPA, it will be similar to that. And we'll decide where is proficient, where is it, what are the different levels, emerging, progressing, and proficient. We'll set those standards in the 22-23 school year. So if you have any questions about the OELPA, please feel free to contact me by email. We are developing a community of practice, which is a group of educators who have experience working with English learners and students with significant cognitive disabilities. So if you have any educators like that on your teams or in your consortia, please have them get in touch with me if they'd be interested in participating in this community of practice. It's an ongoing project. It'll go on, through the timeline that you see on the slide through 22-23. So it's a way to get those educators aware, to adopt the assessment program in the know early on. And like I mentioned, you'll get to try out those items and review manuals and resources, which will be helpful as we prepare to have this new assessment up and running on a continual basis upon the end of the grant. And I'll put my email address and a reminder in the chat in a moment. But up next, Paula Mahaley has some updates about the OELPA and the OELPS.
Thank you, David, and good morning to everyone. Happy to be here to share. You've heard information about the new test, what's coming, and I'll give information on the tests that are already here. And so in terms of the OELPA, Rasha had mentioned this, and we were a little bit concerned prior to the test window of OELPA. We weren't quite sure how many English learners would be able to actually take the OELPA because it is an in-person test. It cannot be administered remotely. And we're happy to say that the districts and parents did a wonderful job of making sure that the English learners were administered the OELPA in person. And at this point, we have preliminary totals. Our vendor is cleaning up. They always do this when the test window closes. So at this point, we have over 230,000 completed domain tests. Now that's all 4 of the domain tests. In terms of how many students completed their required tests, if they had to take all 4 or if they took 3, 2, 1, whatever, that's a preliminary number as well. So we have an estimate at this point. It's a little bit over 59,000 students completed the OELPA, whatever was required for them. Just to give you a comparison, for example, in past years, we've had about 63 to 64,000 students. So even with everything going on this year, with the pandemic, with remote, with hybrid learning approaches, 59,000 is a very good number. So again, districts and parents did a wonderful job, as did the students as well, in taking the OELPA. And the OELPA dates, June 7th, the electronic results will be available. Generally, it's very early in the morning, so you'll want to check those results out on the online reporting system. And once you've checked those results, please remember, and I'm sure you won't forget this, to go into EMIS to upcode the English learner code, especially those students, because of their results on OELPA. If they've received the proficient overall level, they've received all 4s and 5s, a combination, they are exiting the program. And so that code will need to be updated in EMIS. And then June 25th, the printed family reports are going to be shipped to districts and schools. And the family reports are going to have the information to be reported. So parents are notified, parents and guardians are notified of the students' OELPA results. And please note that there are templates for translated family reports that you'll find on our department website. And then moving to the OELPS, we have numbers for the OELPS as well. It's a little bit slower this year, and the numbers seem a bit lower. At this point, I checked the numbers this morning. We have 13,094 completed OELPS. And again, comparing in past years, we've had as high as 20,000 completed OELPS. Last year, because the window was stopped because of the pandemic, we had about 15,000. So this year we're at 13,000, but keep in mind that's OELPS. We don't have the numbers yet for the provisional identification. So again, those numbers are really strong. And for these students, there's the language usage survey, which is intended to give results whether the student should be screened. If the results say the student does have or has had a dominant language other than English in the home, then the student would be screened, and that would be the OELPS. But again, it's in person. So if the student would not be able to have the OELPS administered in person, then there's the provisional identification. And the provisional identification, it has elements. Each district is going to decide what elements fit into the provisional identification. The survey is one of those elements that must be included with the provisional identification. We've been having some questions in terms of next year. Will the provisional identification still be allowed? We need guidance from the federal government on that. So we know the provisional identification is in place this year, and we will be waiting for that guidance to see what's going to be happening for next school year. The Guidelines for Identifying English Learners in Ohio is the document that's going to give the information for the identification process and some additional information. It includes the language usage survey, the information you need for that document, that process. It also has information on the screener, the OELPS, the provisional, also information on the parent notification, and then a little bit on the OELPA. And this document is available on the department website. So for the OELPS dates, June 30th is the end. That's when the test window for OELPS closes for this school year. There is always maintenance that has to be done with the OELPS. The form needs to be changed. The form that was given, that's just the group of questions that appear on the OELPS. That form has to be changed for the next year. That's going to happen this July. Then the OELPS will reopen for school year 2021-2022 on August 5th. And so some districts and schools will start August 5th, and we'll see through August and September high numbers of the OELPs being administered. We'd like to share some information on the assessment accommodations for English learners on the OST, Ohio State tests, the content tests. The Ohio Accessibility Manual has information on students with disabilities, on English learners, and those accommodations and supports that will help those students in terms of the OST, the content tests. The information for English learners begins on page 25 of that document. These are the assessment accommodations for English learners taking the OST. And when you're considering assigning the accommodations, please focus on whether it's appropriate for the English learner, whether that accommodation is appropriate to help lessen the language barrier. I'll go quickly through some of these. I'm going to do a couple in more detail. Dual monitors could be used for the oral translation or human reader. Extended time might be 1.5 to 2 times the allotted time on the test itself. Human reader, the student may be having a human reader in the classroom, and this accommodation would be helpful on the OST. Keep in mind the human reader is not allowed on the English language arts test. The scribe might be more appropriate for a beginning level English learner, and again is not available for the English language arts test. And then the Spanish English test. For English learners, over 30% of them, their native language is Spanish, so this test is provided for them. And then there is text to speech. And keep in mind that for the OST, we're still in that window. The English language arts window closed for the OST, actually just last Friday, but the window is still open for mathematics, science, and social studies. I'm going to give some detailed information on the oral translation and the word-to-word dictionaries. So for the oral translation on the OST, keep in mind this is a process that is provided in person, cannot be done remotely, and of course you're going to be following the safety measures, mask, distance, and test security. So there were a few frequently asked questions, and we're going to go over those now. What can be translated on the OST? Mathematics, science, and social studies. That is the entire test. The general directions, the items, and if there are any STEM's directions in the STEM, all of that may be translated. The students' constructed responses, whether written or spoken, may be translated. Now for the English language arts tests and the OELPS and OELPA, only the general test directions may be translated. The test itself, once the test begins, even if there are directions in a STEM or passage, they may not be translated. So only test directions may be translated for the English language arts, OELPS and OELPA. And the next question is, may oral translators translate a student's response to English? And yes, they may. Students may write in English and nothing more needs to be done. The student may write in their native language and the translator may translate that written response. That can happen while the student is taking the test or at a later time. The translator may transcribe that student's response into English. And the student may respond orally in their native language as they're taking the test, and the translator would be typing, again, as the student is taking the test. Keep in mind that the student responses must be submitted in English. Student responses in native language will not be scored. So this is a key point when students are responding in their native language. And the last question If the students take the bilingual, that's the Spanish-English version I just mentioned a while ago. If they take that version, must a school provide an oral translator? Now, while the bilingual version is going to be very helpful for the student, the oral translator may still be required or needed for those student constructed responses. So consider that when you're setting up that test. And districts are always obligated to provide appropriate accommodations, which may include the oral translation or any of those that I had mentioned, the dual monitor, extended time, and so forth. And when I'm talking about these accommodations, that's going to be noted for that particular student. Additional information on the oral translation may be found in Appendix B, and that's Appendix B of the Test Administration Manual. Not the accessibility that I talked about, but the Test Administration Manual for the OST, Appendix B, will have more information for the oral translation. And going on to the word-to-word dictionaries. When you are choosing a word-to-word dictionary, please keep in mind that that dictionary may not have definitions, pictures, sentences, or phrases, because a possible answer to a test question might be found in a definition or a sentence or a picture. And more information may be found in the accessibility manual on page 29 for the word-to-word dictionary. It will also list the approved dictionaries and glossaries. And so there is the list of bilingual word-to-word dictionaries. You may know this one as the Massachusetts word-to-word dictionaries. Massachusetts does a great job of updating this dictionary, and many states like Ohio have adopted this dictionary. There's also the ACT and College Board or SAT approved bilingual word-to-word dictionaries. They are used on the ACT and SAT, but they may also be used on the OST. And finally, the Steinhardt glossaries for English learners may be used. So I went through that really quickly just in the interest of time. So if you have any questions on any of these, I would be happy to answer any of them, and I will put my email address in the chat as well. Thank you and have a great day and a great rest of the year. And I'm not sure if Rosh is coming back on or Donna or David, so I will say thank you to everyone who attended this meeting. And again, any questions, please send them to us and we will be happy to respond. We're here to help.
Rasha, any concluding comments?
I was just typing in my email and our email contact information because I know that last section was really fast because we were running out of time. But thank you so much everyone for coming. Like I said, we're recording this webinar. I'll make sure it gets posted. I'll send up a follow-up email with the link to the meeting recording and any questions that you may have, and I'll send the PowerPoint as well. But for any questions that you might have, please feel free to contact me or any of us that we've presented today. Thanks, Donna. Thank you, Paula. Thanks, David, for always being here. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. I'll try to see if there's any questions that I can answer in the chat as well still.